Welcome back to the Nexus Vault. I'm your host Justin, and today we'll be talking about the gaming giant Atari.
Attention shoppers, the new Atari cartridge game is in.
Excuse me.
Uh-oh. George again.
Ooh, Atari's ASCII battle.
It comes with 27 games, but that's just for starters. You can get 9 cartridges, 187 games.
Blackjack. Oh!
I'd like an Atari.
Sorry, only our demonstrators left.
Mine!
No, George. Mine.
The new video computer system by Atari. More games, more fun.
While Atari may not be able to hold the title for the first home console, they can, however, hold their heads up high with the title of the first arcade game. Computer Space, released in 1971, wasn't the most well received, with most players complaining that the instructions weren't helpful, making the game unplayable for most. While looking at this video game, you might be sitting there thinking, wow, this doesn't look very hard or complicated. I don't quite understand what was so hard to understand about this. But one thing you have to remember is that this was the first arcade game. Most kids would be walking into a store or wherever they would have had these monstrosity of machines. I mean, look at this thing. I'm looking at it in 2024 and like, what am I supposed to hit right there? All I see is a green, a red, and 2 yellow buttons on that thing with, I mean, look at it. They probably thought they could sit on this thing and ride to space. I mean, come on. The term Easter egg is widely known in the world of gaming, but its origins trace back to a hidden room within the Atari 2600 game Adventure, programmed by Warren Robinette and released in 1979. A year after the game's release, players stumbled upon this hidden gem. Robinette, frustrated with the lack of credit given to the programmers, decided to take action. He secretly devised a hidden room, accessible only through a specific series of movements within the game. Upon successfully navigating these movements, players were greeted with a surprising sight, a single gray dot bearing the message created by Warren Robinette. This act of defiance not only marked the birth of the Easter egg phenomenon, but also served as a bold statement advocating for recognition of the creative minds behind video game development. In 1975, the arcade monster Pong was released and available to be played in your own living room, marking and signifying the birth of the commercial video game industry. Developed by Nolan Bunchell, Pong rapidly gained popularity in arcades, prompting Atari to release a dedicated home version in the same year, preceding the Atari 2600. Pong's introduction to households ignited a cultural phenomenon as families and friends gathered around screens to enjoy its simple yet captivating gameplay, contributing significantly to the mainstream acceptance of video gaming. The widespread success of Pong solidified Atari's leadership in the industry, paving the way for future releases and influencing the direction of video games as a whole. Without Atari's success here with Pong, there may not have been a big gaming industry in the future. The paddle controller was a key innovation in video game history. Popularized by the success of Pong in 1972, it featured a knob or dial for players to control the movement of a paddle on the screen. This simple yet effective design made it accessible to all players of many skill levels and became the standard input for many early video game consoles. Its versatility led to its adoption in various game genres beyond Pong-style games. For example, Night Driver, Breakout, and Warlords. Overall, the paddle controller played a pivotal role in shaping the early landscape of video gaming and established conventions for input devices that endure to this day. The Atari 2600, released in 1977, was a groundbreaking home video game console that revolutionized gaming. It introduced the concept of interchangeable game cartridges, allowing players to expand their library of games. With its iconic joystick controller and key titles like Space Invaders and Pac-Man, the Atari 2600 made gaming accessible to all players of all ages. Despite its age, the console remained in production until 1992, showcasing its enduring popularity and lasting impact on the gaming industry. One other interesting thing about the Atari 2600 is that it stands out as the company's most successful console. selling over 30 million units globally during its lifetime from 1977 to 1992. In contrast to the success of the Atari 2600, the Atari 5200 and 7800 faced challenges in the market, with lower sale figures compared to the 2600. The Atari Lynx, a handheld system released in 1989, also struggled to compete with Nintendo's Game Boy, selling in the hundreds of thousands. Similarly, the Atari Jaguar, marketed as the world's first 64-bit console upon its release in 1993, faced tough competition and achieved estimated sale figures of around 250 to 300,000 units worldwide. Despite variations in sale performance, the Atari 2600 remains a standout success, solidifying Atari's lasting impact on the gaming industry. None of the consoles were ever to really regain the success of the 2600, and that's probably because of the other competition that came out. Sega was out, Nintendo was booming. There was a lot of things happening in the gaming market at this time, and something had to be left behind. Atari's cultural impact extends far beyond gaming, leaving an undeniable mark on social gatherings and entertainment. Social gatherings at arcade became a staple for kids of that time period, marking one of the first instances where people would meet up solely to hang out and play video games. The Atari logo is also undeniably one of the most recognizable in the world today, resonating with generations of gamers and non-gamers alike. Even those who've never played Atari games can instantly recognize certain sounds associated with them. For example, I bet you can instantly recognize some of these sounds. Even today, Atari remains one of the most collectible brands globally, cementing its legacy as an icon with a lasting impact on pop culture. In 1988, Atari took Nintendo to court, claiming they were playing dirty under the Sherman Antitrust Act, a law meant to keep companies from getting too big and bossy. Well, you may be asking why, and that's because Nintendo wasn't exactly playing nice with their third-party game makers, putting tight restrictions on how many games they could release. Nintendo fired back in November 1989, accusing Atari of the same, plus stealing their ideas for a fancy cartridge system. I bet we all can guess who won that. Nintendo. And, one thing I find interesting about this whole feud is that it still kind of echoes in today's gaming world. You've got companies like Xbox and PlayStation who are not necessarily working together, but striving for the same thing, putting their exclusives on PC and even sometimes on each other's consoles now. Back in 1970, one of Atari's co-founders, Nolan Bushnell, brought something truly special to the world, Chuck E. Cheese. He dreamed up this amazing place where kids could run wild, playing arcade games, watching animatronic shows, and chowing down on delicious pizza all in one spot. And I don't know about you guys, but I can remember wishing to go to Chuck E. Cheese every day. It was truly something special as a kid, and even taking my own son there is still something very special to me. Well, we all knew this one was coming. One of the biggest flops in gaming history, Atari's E.T. When E.T., the video game, hit the shelves, it was rushed out to ride the wave of the movie's hype. But boy, oh boy, did that backfire. Players couldn't stand the clunky gameplay. And it wasn't just the people trying to play the game. The critics, well, let's just say they weren't shy about tearing it apart either. Atari ended up flooding the market with so many copies that you could practically swim in them. It's no wonder why people say E.T. had a hand in crashing the gaming market in 1983. Just goes to show even the big shots can strike out sometimes. Atari has left an unforgettable mark on gaming, with iconic titles like Pac-Man, Space Invaders, Adventure, Night Driver, Asteroids, and Centipede. They've revolutionized the industry, paving the way for its growth into what we see today. If you've watched this far, we sincerely thank you for your time. If you enjoyed this content, please consider liking and subscribing. It means the world to us. Thank you.